is Amanda Cohen, and I am the chef owner of Dirt Candy, which is an all-vegetable restaurant in Lower Manhattan. I had been cooking in the city for a number of years. My passion really was with vegetables, more so than vegetarian food, and this opportunity landed where I could open my own restaurant, and I found a very, very tiny space. It was 350 square feet, and we built Dirt Candy. We sort of built it to fail. The idea was always that if nobody came, I could run it by myself. We opened our doors, and we were the first all-vegetable restaurant in New York City. We're still one of the few restaurants anywhere in the world really dedicated to just vegetables. So within a couple of months, we got to be quite busy. And over the next couple of years, we ended up being one of the busiest restaurants in New York City, or at least one of the hardest restaurants to get a reservation. One of the challenges is I think labor is really hard to find. Certainly the labor pool in the restaurant community has shrunk, and we're just not finding as much or as many staff as we used to. The cost of our produce and all the other goods, it's just gone up so much in the last couple of years. It's hard to pay for it, but it's also hard to explain to the consumers why we have to pass that cost on. And no restaurateur wants to be the most expensive restaurant, but it's almost impossible right now to run a restaurant in New York City without passing on some of those costs. And that includes, the labor problem. To find labor, we really have to raise the salaries for the people who work for us. And it's a hard concept, I think, for guests who come to the restaurant. Restaurateurs don't have a lot of money. We can't just pay people more, because if we pay people more, we're not going to have the money to pay them. So we have to find that money somewhere. And that money somewhere is actually how we make money, which is through selling food. And so we have to raise the cost of the food or the wine or whatever it is you're selling in the restaurant. Dirt Candy got rid of tipping when we switched locations. I put out an ad one day, and honestly, I got no responses, and I couldn't figure out how that was possible. I knew there were cooks out there. I knew we were still like a valued restaurant that people wanted to put on their resume. So it sort of started the realization that we really didn't pay our cooks enough, and nobody in the industry paid their cooks enough. But Dirt Candy wasn't alone in that. My cooks were probably only taking home maybe 120, 150 a night, and that's just not enough to live in New York City. And then I sort of was looking around my restaurant, and I realized that my server was making a lot of money. She was leaving the restaurant with about $500 in tips. And that just sort of blew my mind that here was one person who worked incredibly hard, walking away with so much money. And then here were these other people who worked in my kitchen who also worked incredibly hard and weren't walking away with that much money. But there was no way to shift that money unless we got rid of tipping. The same time that was happening, I started doing this deep dive into the history of tipping, and I was really dismayed to learn that I had participated in this system. It's a pretty sexist, racist system that benefits very few people. And I also realized that what it does is basically took my ability to pay my staff out of my hands and it put it in my customers' hands. And I wanted to be able to pay my staff, and I wanted to be the HR department. And that whole system really started not to work for me. And so when we opened Dirt Candy, I decided to give it a go and see what it would be like to run a restaurant without tipping. It's certainly been a bit rocky. We've had more and less restaurants join us on this journey. But overall, it's been pretty successful. My customers are used to it. They really like it. It allows me to pay my back of house a pretty good living wage, and it also allows me to pay my front of house a pretty good living wage. There's not this huge disparity between the front of house and the back of house. And one of the great things for my front of house is that they have a guaranteed income. You work your full shift, you get your full pay, you never have to worry. The IRC is the Independent Restaurant Coalition, and it started right at the very beginning of the pandemic. Restaurateurs all over the country and chefs were sort of sitting there watching what was happening. The world was telling us not to gather in places, not to see people, to stay at home. And there was this realization that we needed to sort of come together and fight for our ability to survive. Particularly at the time, it didn't seem like there was anybody else who was going to fight for American businesses to survive. So a bunch of restaurateurs and chefs got together, and we were talking every day about what could we do? How could we save the restaurant industry? There was no way most of us were going to be able to pay our rent if we weren't making money. Our insurance, all those costs that never disappeared during the pandemic. And then we were sort of, I think, pleased to see that the original PPP came out. But one of the problems was it actually didn't really work for restaurants the way it was originally set up. And so one of the first things the IRC did was get together and start to lobby Congress to see how we could amend the PPP. And that actually, I think we were a huge part of that. And we were a huge part of the second PPP and how it worked for restaurants. It had a special carve out for how long you could use it and how you could use it. And then the IRC really came together because we were trying to get a special bill for restaurants. Most restaurateurs felt like they weren't going to survive unless there was more money coming from the federal government. We managed to get the Restaurant Revitalization Fund passed. Unfortunately, it wasn't enough money to save all restaurants. Instead of the $120 billion, restaurants only got $28.8 billion. And one of the things about that number is that independent restaurants had never come together beforehand to lobby Congress for something like this. This was an unknown organization. And the fact that this tiny little organization managed to get a bill passed through Congress in this short amount of time for $28 billion was pretty amazing. And it really showed the power that independent restaurants have. And that's sort of the next phase of independent restaurants, or the IRC, which is let's keep this going. Let's keep our voices alive and keep them loud and keep, trying to lobby Congress for things that will help the independent restaurant community survive. Restaurants are such a huge part of the American financial ecosystem. We need Congress to listen to us, because without us, that ecosystem falls apart. Short term for independent restaurants, it's still a struggle. The boat hasn't stabilized quite yet. I think the long term things will stabilize. I think we'll see a resurgence of people interested in working. And I think at some point our costs, while they might not quite stabilize, I think our customers will get more used to paying more. And we will see restaurants be quite successful again. Reach out to any restaurateur you need. Make friends with the people on your block. You're going to need a lot of advice. Join the IRC. There's a lot of great members who are always willing to help. Look at this as a long-term project. It's not short-term. To really be a success, you have to assume it's going to be a multiple year endeavor.